The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and ruled by those who held the biggest guns, or the deepest pockets. In the outer rims of the Yaren quadrant, the name Kale Drax was whispered with, the kind of fear reserved for monsters, a war criminal by every interstellar standard. Kale had once wiped out an entire colony over a trade dispute. Not a single court had held him accountable, not because he was innocent, but because no one survived long enough to testify. For years, bounty hunters tried to claim the price on Kale's head. It wasn't just high, it was legendary, enough to buy your own moon or 10. But every attempt ended the same way: death, dismemberment, and the name Drax written in blood. That changed when he entered human space. There wasn't a warning, no flashy jump signature, no intercepted comms. Just one quiet ping. A small, dirty freighter with fake credentials slipping past the border of Sector 9. Inside it was Kale, injured, alone, and desperate. He had no choice. The last few bounty crews had been closing in, and his ship was damaged. Anywhere else, he would have been hunted down like an animal. But he wasn't anywhere else now. He was among them. The United Terran defense grid picked up his ship's signature, of course. Human tech was paranoid and ridiculously overpowered. Even a grain of sand moving faster than light got flagged by 6 satellites and 3 battle cruisers. But no shots were fired, no demands were made. Kale was simply let through. That's when the panic started. The hunter fleets, dozens of them, from the elite Scythe Corps assassins to the wild border Yaren pirates, had been tracking Kale for weeks. Some were seconds behind him. But the moment he crossed into human territory, they stopped, all of them. Ziren Vatak, one of the more notorious mercenaries in the hunt, actually turned his ship around mid-warp. His crew thought he'd gone mad. "It's just humans," one of them had said. "What are you so scared of?" Ziren didn't answer at first. He just stared at the nav screen, sweat pouring down his fur-covered face. Finally, he said the same thing others had whispered before but never explained. "You don't mess with humans, not out there, not in their space." No one wanted to admit it, but there was something wrong about the Terran zones. Not wrong like evil, wrong like unpredictable. Like a storm that looked calm from the outside but would tear your ship apart if you got too close. Humans had only been in the galactic scene for about 70 years. That was nothing compared to the civilizations that had been around for thousands. But in that short time they had done things no one expected. Won wars they should have lost, forged alliances with species that were otherwise sworn enemies, and worst of all, they never played by the rules. The Council tried to impose sanctions on them once. It ended with half the Council building mysteriously exploding. Overnight, there was never an investigation because everyone already knew. There's a saying among old bounty hunters: if the target's in human space, he's already dead. You just don't know it yet. Kale, bleeding and half-conscious, didn't understand that. He thought he could hide among them, maybe even blend in, disappear. After all, humans were the young ones, the chaotic newbies. Surely they wouldn't care who he was, as long as he kept his head down. But he didn't realize the truth. Humans hated monsters, especially the kind that thought they were clever, and they didn't always go for justice in the clean, civilized way. No, humans like to make examples As Kale's ship limped through the asteroid belts around New Earth's outer defense ring, a single automated message blinked on his screen. Docking approved. Welcome to Terran. Sector 9. Remain in your vessel. You will be extracted shortly. No threats, no warnings, just cold efficiency. Kale laughed weakly. He thought he'd won, that the hunters gave up because they were cowards. He didn't know that they weren't scared of him anymore. They were scared of what would happen to him. The docking clamps hissed as Kale's stolen freighter locked into place at Station Delta 9, an orbital platform spinning quietly above the blue planet humans now called New Earth. The docking bay lights flickered from red to green, then to a dull yellow. A signal Kale didn't understand, but didn't care to question. He was alive. That was more than most could say after facing down half the bounty sector. Inside the cramped cockpit, Kale leaned back in the blood-stained pilot's seat. He was pale. His right arm hung useless at his side, the shoulder cauterized but infected. His ribs ached with every breath, and the side of his face was swollen from where the bounty hunter from Armory Prime had nearly crushed his skull. That bastard had gotten close, too close. But Kale had fought dirty like always. He jammed a plasma knife up through the hunter's throat before taking off in his ship. And now here he was. Human space sanctuary. As far as he was concerned. Kale chuckled to himself, low and painful. The humans weren't nearly as terrifying as the stories made them out to be. He'd seen their kind before. Loud, arrogant, too emotional for their own good. They were brash, impulsive, but easy to manipulate. They took in refugees, criminals, smugglers, all without asking too many questions. As long as you kept your mouth shut and followed their strange little rules, you could disappear among them. He was counting on that. But what Kale didn't realize was that the humans had seen his type before, too, and they didn't like being underestimated. A mechanical hiss echoed through the ship. He turned, eyes narrowing. The docking bay hatch had opened behind him, and the ramp was slowly extending. There were no sirens, no soldiers marching in with rifles raised. Just silence and a strange, eerie calm. Kale grabbed the small sidearm he kept under the console and tucked it behind his back. He pushed himself up, teeth gritted from the pain shooting through his ribs, and limped toward the ramp. He expected to see an officer, maybe two, maybe some grunts in armor. But no one was there. Just an empty metal corridor bathed in white light. Cautiously, Kale stepped down onto the ramp, every footstep echoing. The moment he touched the floor of the station, the lights dimmed slightly, and a quiet voice came from the intercom. Above. Remain where you are. Medical assistance en route. Do not resist. The voice wasn't robotic. It wasn't even harsh. It was calm, polite, almost kind. Kale's fingers tightened on the grip of the gun behind his back. 2 minutes later, a small medical drone hovered into view. It didn't speak. It simply scanned him, beeped, and extended a needle. Kale flinched and almost drew his weapon, but he paused. The drone didn't attack. It injected him with something cool, something that made his knees wobble and his head clear. Nanites, human tech. Damn good, too. Within seconds, the swelling in his face had started to ease. The bleeding from his shoulder stopped. The pain faded just enough to let him stand straighter. Another automated message. Follow the blue lights, no sudden movements. Kale didn't like this. No guards, no questions, no interrogation, just polite instructions and silent corridors. The human stations were nothing like the rest of the galaxies. No grime, no noise, no chaos. It was sterile, controlled, and that made him uneasy. Still, he followed the lights. The path led him through the docking wing, then through 2 long corridors lined with glass. On the other side of the glass he could see activity. Humans walking, talking, drinking coffee, working on consoles. Civilians, families, soldiers in light armor. No one even looked at him. He passed a group of what looked like cadets in training gear. One of them looked up briefly, saw him, and looked away. They didn't care, or they pretended not to. Kale felt like he was walking into a trap he couldn't see, and worse, he knew. He couldn't afford to run, not in his state. He needed rest, medicine. He needed to vanish. The humans could help him do that, whether they liked it or not. The corridor finally ended in front of a single black door. The lights turned red. A beep, then a soft chime. The door slid open. Inside was a simple room with a table and 2 chairs. One was already occupied. A human woman, mid-40s maybe, with short black hair and a crisp gray uniform. No rank insignia, no name badge, just a calm, unreadable face and sharp eyes. Kale Drax, she said without standing. Take a seat. Kale didn't move. Are you arresting me? He asked, voice low. No, she said. Then what the hell is this? We're deciding what to do with you. Her tone didn't change. It wasn't a threat, just a fact. Kale slowly sat down across from her, his hand still resting near his hidden weapon. You don't know who I am, he said. If you did, I wouldn't be breathing right now. Oh, we know exactly who you are, the woman replied. She tapped a small tablet on the table. His image appeared, his record. War crimes, massacres, destruction of protected colonies, escaped multiple trials. At least 12 systems had bounties on him. A few wanted him dead. Most wanted him tortured first. Kale smirked. Then why am I not in chains? The woman leaned forward, elbows on the table. Because in human space we don't play bounty hunter games, she said. We don't care about alien courts or political hits dressed up as justice. We don't do mercenary cleanup. She paused. But when someone like you comes here, bleeding, desperate, looking to disappear, well, that's different. Kale laughed, hoarse and bitter. You think you're better than the rest of the galaxy? No, she said simply. We just don't lie to ourselves about monsters. We don't hide them in our courts or pretend they don't exist. When we find one, we deal with it. He tilted his head, eyeing her carefully. And what's that mean exactly? You're going to shoot me in the head and dump my body into the sun? Her smile was small. No. That scared him more than if she'd said yes. Kale leaned forward, voice dropping. Look, I'm not asking for a free pass. I just need time, space. I can pay, I have accounts, contacts. We don't want your credits. I can give information. I know things about the council, about Blacksate, prisons, weapon smuggling. We already know. Kale's voice cracked. Then what do you want? The woman stood. The room suddenly felt colder. We want you to understand something. Kale, she said, you're not an alien. space anymore. You're not hiding in the cracks of broken systems or bribing corrupt courts. You came here to us. She stepped around the table. You think we're naive. You think we're the soft ones, but you're wrong. We're the species that nuked ourselves into the Stone Age and clawed back with bare hands. We survived our own extinction twice. We fought wars no one remembers against enemies no one else believed existed. She stopped next to him. Quiet. We don't forget monsters. We bury them. Cale didn't move. He couldn't. He felt cold sweat dripping down his back. I made it into your space, he said weakly. That's supposed to mean I'm safe. She nodded. You are. No bounty hunter will touch you here. No council agent, no merc crew. Then she leaned down and whispered, because we want to deal with you ourselves. The door opened behind them. 2 soldiers stepped in. Not brutish thugs, calm, precise, efficient. Their uniforms were dark, their weapons sleek, not flashy. Cale looked at them and knew. These weren't guards. These were executioners dressed as professionals. He stood slowly. He didn't reach for his gun. It wouldn't matter. As they flanked him, he looked at the woman. I came here for protection. She nodded once. And you'll get it, she said. No one out there will ever find you again. He blinked. And what about in here? Her smile returned just slightly. That's between you and the dark. Cale Drax had faced death before. Hell, he dealt it more times than he could count. But something about the silence in the human's facility made him uneasy in a way he didn't fully understand. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. More like being swallowed by something huge and calm, like a beast that didn't need to roar to be dangerous. He was escorted down a narrow hallway, still flanked by the 2 soldiers. They didn't say a word. They didn't shove him or bark orders. Just walked with him step by step, as if they were escorting a guest. But Cale could feel it in their body language. Every move was precise. They weren't babysitting him. They were watching, waiting, like if he so much as twitched wrong, they'd end him without hesitation. The hallway twisted and turned, but there were no windows, no markings. Just gray wall, smooth metal floor, and the soft hum of machinery somewhere in the background. He tried to memorize the path, instinct, habit, but even that was hard. Everything looked the same. Eventually, they stopped in front of another black door. It slid open without a sound. Inside was strange. A room clean, not a cell. There was a bed, a chair, a desk small. Bathroom off to the side, a screen embedded in the wall, currently black. It was nicer than most places Cale had chosen to stay in over the years. This is a holding suite, said the female guard on his left. First words he'd heard since leaving the interrogation room. Her voice was calm, flat. You'll remain here until evaluation is complete, she added. Cale turned, jaw tight. Evaluation for what? Neither answered. The male guard simply said, food will be delivered on schedule. Screen will instruct you when necessary. Then they turned and left. Cale was alone. He waited for the door to lock. But it didn't. No sound, no magnetic click. He stepped forward, touched it, and nothing happened. The door remained closed, but not locked. At least not in any way he could detect. That was the first trick, he realized. No bars, no chains, just uncertainty. He limped over to the bed, sat down. Carefully. His body still hurt. The nanites had done a good job patching him up, but not enough to make him feel whole. Again. His shoulder ached, his stomach burned. The crash into human space had done more damage than he thought. He stared at the blank screen for a while. Then he lay back and closed his eyes. Just for a moment. That moment stretched into hours. When he woke, there was a tray of food on the table. He hadn't heard anyone come in. It was real food, too. Not the rehydrated crap served in prison sectors or military barracks. Meat, vegetables, even a warm bread roll. Everything clean and neatly arranged. A cup of water. Kale hesitated. Poison? Maybe. But that wasn't the human way, was it? No. They wanted him alive. For now. He ate. After he finished, the screen on the wall blinked to life. A soft chime sounded. A simple message appeared: prepare for debriefing, stand by. Kale leaned back, wiping his mouth. He hated not knowing. In the criminal underworld, things were simple. You kill or get killed. Betrayal was expected. Rules were clear, even if brutal. But this was too quiet. The screen changed again. A video feed. The same woman from before, the one in the gray uniform. Her name still wasn't displayed. No ranks, no insignia, just her face and that calm voice. You're not under arrest, Kale. Not in the traditional sense. We're not here to punish you. We're here to assess you. He leaned forward. Assess me for what? To determine what you are. I'm a fugitive, a war criminal. You know that. Her expression didn't change. You're more than that or less. We're still deciding. Kale's patience snapped. You think this is funny? I didn't come here for your games. I came here to survive. She paused. You chose human space to hide because you assumed it was your best chance. Because bounty hunters won't follow you here, and you were right. She leaned in slightly. But that protection doesn't come free. You don't get to bring your filth into our territory and expect us to look the other way. Kale stood up. I haven't killed anyone since crossing the border. That doesn't matter, she cut in. You came here broken, leaking blood across our sky. You dragged your sins behind you. That means we get to decide what happens next. He stared at the screen, fists clenched. So decide, kill me or let me go, but don't pretend you're any better than the rest. Her gaze sharpened. We are better, she said quietly. That's why you came here. The screen went black. The days blurred together after that. There was no torture, no interrogations, no chains. But Kale wasn't free. Every day the same routine. Meals arrived, the screen turned on. Messages appeared, instructions. Questions, psychological tests. Sometimes puzzles, sometimes old footage. From human wars, images of fire and death and soldiers standing over burning cities, eyes hollow. He was told to observe and interpret. What did it mean? What emotions did it trigger? What decisions would he have made? At first, Kale mocked the system, gave sarcastic answers, ignored the tasks. Then things changed. They showed him himself. Footage from his past, things he thought no one had seen. Security feeds from the war on Varkas 4. Drones catching his retreat from the fallen city of Orak. A recording from the massacre on Rylos 7. Civilians screaming, children running. Him walking away from a burning building, blood on his face, no commentary, no accusations, just the images. Again and again. And then the questions returned. Do you regret this? Did you know what would happen? If you had the chance, would you do it differently? Cale stopped sleeping. He paced, he screamed at the walls, he threw the food tray once. It was replaced within minutes, no punishment, no reaction. The silence was worse than any beating. On what felt like the seventh day, though time blurred strangely in that place, he snapped. The screen lit up with a new message. State the justification for the Rilos incident. Cale stared at it. Then, hoarse from sleepless nights, he finally answered. They betrayed us, they sold our positions to the enemy. I had to make an example. No reply. The next message came 5 hours later. The children. His chest tightened. They were collateral. Another silence, 6 more hours. Do you believe that now? He stood in the center of the room, shaking. No, he whispered. I don't know. That night a new visitor came. The door opened, no guards, just a man. In a black jacket, civilian clothes. Hands in his pockets. He looked young, maybe late 30s. But his eyes were ancient. He stepped in like he owned the place. Looked around the room, then sat in the chair. You've been through the full cycle, the man said. Most break by now. Cale sat slowly, eyes narrowed. You people think you're clever, don't you? No, the man said. We just know what we're dealing with. Cale leaned in. So what happens now? The man looked at him for a long time. We've decided, he said finally. You won't be executed, not yet. Cale blinked. We're sending you to a place called Black Hollow. It's off-grid, no comms. No visitors, no windows. A prison. The man smiled faintly. We don't call it that, it's a containment zone. For things the rest of the galaxy refuses to deal with. Cale felt ice in his veins. How long? As long as it takes, the man said. We'll feed you, keep you alive, give you work. Even. But you won't leave. No bounty hunter will ever find you. No council ever touch you. Cale clenched his fists. So you're burying me? The man stood, heading for the door. No, he said, we're studying you. And then he was gone. Cale Drax sat in that silent room for the rest of the night, staring at the blank screen. And for the first time in his life, not as a fugitive, not as a killer, not as a man clawing to stay ahead of his past, but as something else entirely. He wondered if this was worse than death. Not hunted, not feared, just observed. Because in human space, justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it just watched and waited. The ship that carried Cale Drax to Black Hollow didn't have a name. At least not one painted anywhere on the hull. It was matte black, silent as a ghost, and moved through space without broadcasting any signature at all. Not even a whisper on the long-range sensors. He hadn't seen the outside of it, only the metal insides, gray corridors, padded restraints, no windows. He wasn't cuffed, but he might as well have been. The guards, if that's what they were, weren't soldiers. They didn't speak. Wore plain clothing, not uniforms. Looked like scientists almost. Clinical. Cold. Like they weren't transporting a man. Like he was a specimen. Cale didn't ask questions anymore. 3 days passed like that. Silent, unmarked, he was fed through. Slit in the door. No faces, no voices. The lights in his room dimmed on a timer, and he guessed that was supposed to be night. He slept restlessly, dreamed of fire and children screaming. Woke up sweating and clutching the side of his head. His mind was unraveling in pieces. Slowly, methodically, and deep down he knew that was the point. On the fourth day, the door opened. Two figures waited outside, one woman, one man, both tall, both dressed in the same sharp gray clothes he'd seen back on the station. No insignia, no weapons visible, just that same calm, that human calm, the kind that unnerved you more than any threat. "Let's go," the woman said. Cale stood. No resistance, no questions, because it didn't matter anymore, not really. He followed them through a short tunnel that vibrated faintly under his boots. A docking connection. The air was recycled, stale but clean. The doors on the other side hissed open. And then he saw it. Black Hollow. It was a station, technically orbiting some dead rock of a planet that wasn't even on any star maps he remembered. The gravity was artificial, slightly heavier than normal, which made his movements feel sluggish. Every step he took felt like walking through mud. The corridor curved sharply. No straight lines. Every wall was coated in dark ceramic plating that absorbed sound. Lights were recessed, cameras were hidden, but Cale could feel them. Everything here was built to observe and contain. Not punish, not kill, just keep. The woman finally spoke as they reached a sealed bulkhead. "This is Sector 3, where you'll be assigned." "Assigned," he muttered. "We don't do traditional confinement here," she said. "You'll work, you'll contribute. Your psychological profile determines your placement." Cale raised an eyebrow. "And what job does a war criminal usually get?" The man beside her, silent until now, answered flatly. "Cleaning the waste tanks, tends to humble people." Cale scoffed. "I've killed men with cleaner mouths than yours." The man didn't react. Just opened the door. Inside was a large open space, probably 30 m wide, circular, with metal grates along the floor and sealed vents. Overhead, no windows, no decor, just utility. There were others in the room. 6 of them, all different species. 2 humans, 1 insectoid from the Yara hives, 1 Krell brute, and 2 smaller, pale-skinned beings that looked half-starved and genetically altered. Cale's arrival got a few glances. The Krell looked up from his seated position in the corner, eyes narrow. One of the humans, a wiry man with a shaved head and a limp, gave Cale a once over and smirked. "Fresh meat," he said, "always fun." Cale didn't respond. He just took a slow step forward, scanning the room. The woman pointed toward a corner bunk. "That's yours." "No walls?" Cale asked. "No privacy," she replied. "Not here." The man beside her tapped something on a tablet. "His tracker's live." "Good," she said. Then to Cale, "Welcome to Black Hollow." And just like that they turned and left. The door sealed behind them. Cale stood there watching it. The silence around him was thick. Then the wiry human stood up, moved slowly toward him, hands in his pockets. "Name's Garrow," the man said. "Used to work out in the cultist belts, piracy, Mostly weapons trafficking couple. Hostage jobs, nothing too serious. He grinned. Cale didn't answer. Garrow tilted his head. You're Cale Drax, right? Cale finally looked at him. His eyes were cold. Yeah. Garrow chuckled. They said you'd be taller. Cale stepped forward just one step and Garrow stopped smiling. Want to measure? I'm happy to help. Cale said quietly. The Krell in the corner laughed, a deep, guttural sound. Garrow backed off, hands raised. All right, relax, just making conversation. Cale found his bunk, sat down. It wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly, but the air. And here, it felt wrong, heavy, controlled. He glanced around at the others. No one was talking anymore. Not really. Just watching. Because in Black Hollow, everyone was dangerous, but no one was free. The days passed. Routine set in. Lights came on at 600. Food arrived in sealed containers. No utensils, no sharp edges. Every meal was nutritionally balanced, but completely tasteless. Cale ate in silence. Mornings were for work. He was assigned to maintenance, rotation, waste disposal. Pipes, tanks, ducts, places no one wanted to go. He was given tools, gloves, a respirator. They never gave him a weapon, didn't need to. Every corridor had silent turrets in the ceiling. Every door had a lockdown protocol. Every room had pressure sensors. You couldn't escape. You couldn't even sneeze wrong without it being recorded. Cale scrubbed grime from reactor vents, cleared sludge from pipes, hauled broken parts through tunnels that smelled like death and decay. He didn't complain because complaining didn't get you anywhere. In the evenings, he sat on his bunk. Sometimes he slept, sometimes he stared at the walls. The dreams got worse. He saw the Rylos fire again, heard the screams. He heard her voice again, that calm woman from the station. We bury monsters. One night a fight broke out. Garrow, twitchy and bored, decided to pick on the insectoid, a six-limbed thing named Chur. Made a joke about bugs and protein. Chur didn't laugh. Next thing Cale knew, there was blood on the floor and a crackling alarm overhead. The response wasn't immediate. There were no guards rushing in. Instead, the room itself responded. Gas hissed from the vents. Chur dropped instantly, twitching. Garrow collapsed seconds later. The rest of them stood still, motionless, watching. An hour later, the gas cleared. Drones came in, carried the bodies out. Neither returned. Cale lay on his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling. The lights never truly went dark here. Just dimmed enough to let you feel the dark creeping in. This place wasn't like the prisons he'd escaped before. It wasn't built to punish. It was built to observe, to study. Every decision he made, every choice, every reaction, he was a rat in a maze. A monster in a box. Weeks passed. Cale didn't know how many. No days marked, no clocks. His thoughts slowed. Not dull. Just quiet. He stopped dreaming. One morning, while cleaning a flooded corridor near the filtration core, he found something. A small etching in the wall, scratched into the paneling with something sharp. It said, "There is no out, only in." He stared at it for a long time. Then, without thinking, he scratched something beneath it using the edge of a broken bolt. Then I'll break the inside. That night something changed. The screen in their shared chamber, dark for Weeks flickered on a message. Drax. Stand by. The others looked at him. He stood slowly, the door opened. Familiar figure waited outside, the same. Woman, same uniform, same calm expression. You've adapted, she said. Kale stared. You watching me again? Always. Why now? Because we think you're ready. He frowned. For what? Her eyes studied him. For a decision. He was led down a new hallway. This one had windows, long narrow slits, showing the stars. He stopped and stared. He hadn't seen space in forever. The stars didn't blink. They just watched. She brought him to a new room. One with a chair, one screen. A table. Nothing else. She sat across from him. There's a ship in orbit, she said. No markings, no registration. It's here. For you. Kale's jaw tightened. You letting me go? No. Then what is this? She leaned forward. Slightly. We want to offer you a choice. He didn't speak, she continued. You're not the only monster we've studied, but you are useful, adaptable. Intelligent, ruthless, but disciplined. You survived Black Hollow without breaking. Is that a compliment? It's a job offer. He stared. You want me to work for you? Not in the traditional sense, not for Earth, not for any official flag, but for us. The part of us that keeps the galaxy honest, the part that doesn't exist on paper. Kale almost laughed. You want a killer? To become a cop? No, she said. We want a killer who knows he's a killer and still chooses control. He looked away. And if I say no, you go back to your bunk, and we watch you rot. And if I say yes, her voice dropped. You'll have purpose, missions, targets. Controlled chaos. We point, you pull the trigger. He leaned back, exhaled slowly, and for the first time in his life he didn't feel hunted. He felt wanted, used, directed, a tool, not a threat. It was a sick kind of salvation, and he wasn't sure if he hated it. Kale Drax didn't answer right away. He sat there in that cold, bright room, the woman watching him like he was a puzzle she'd almost solved. The offer sat between them like a ticking device. One wrong touch and it would go off. Not in fire, but in something quieter, deadlier. Purpose. For a man like Kale, that was more dangerous than a bullet. She waited. Calm, patient, no urgency in her expression. That was the worst part. She already knew what his answer would be. You think I'm just going to nod and play soldier? He muttered finally. No, she said, we think you'll do what you've always done, survive. Only this time with direction. He chuckled darkly. Direction? You mean a leash? Her eyes didn't blink. Call it whatever helps you sleep. He stood and paced the room, arms crossed, tension rippling through his still healing frame. There was too much silence in this place, even when people were speaking. Every room felt like it had walls behind the walls, eyes behind the cameras. And yet here he was, being offered freedom, or something shaped like it. What happens if I take the offer and run? He asked. Her tone didn't change. Then we activate the neural pin embedded in your skull and turn your brain into paste. He paused. What pin? We put it in during your second sleep cycle at Black Hollow. Standard for high-risk candidates. Kale swallowed slowly, touched the back of his head. There was a faint scar near the base of his skull he hadn't paid attention to before. Bastards, he whispered. She didn't deny it. Precaution. Don't take it personally. He turned to face her again, face unreadable. So I'm your assassin now? No, she said, you're our asset and expendable one. The honesty in that sentence was like a punch to the gut. But Kyle had always preferred truth over lies. He could work with honest bastards. It was the noble ones that got people killed. He sat back down. What's the first job? He asked. She smiled, but it wasn't kind. You'll be briefed en route. Kyle didn't return to Black Hollow. They kept their word. Once he said yes, things moved fast. He was taken directly to a smaller wing of the station deep in the sub-levels. There a fresh set of gear waited. Matte black tactical suit, breathable. Armor embedded AI HUD visor. No markings, no rank. Just shadow tech. The kind of equipment that didn't exist officially. The kind they gave to people who weren't supposed to be seen. A silent team, all human, escorted him to the launch deck. No chatter, no questions. They moved like ghosts. Kyle didn't recognize a single face. The ship he boarded wasn't large. Sleek, a scout-class infiltration vessel, black steel, everything dim. Sterile, surgical, only 2 seats in the cockpit. He took the one on the left. His visor flickered as the neural uplink synced. A cold voice filled his ear. Welcome. Asset Cadrax, initiating mission. Protocol. Objective, extraction of subject 905. Priority, containment, not elimination. Destination, Pergan Station, located in neutral fringe territory. Estimated resistance high, Council. Aligned personnel may be present. Lethal force authorized. Kyle snorted, wasn't planning on using kindness anyway. The AI ignored him. And GT, clears throat. And GT, it wasn't here for banter. As the ship slipped into warp, Kyle leaned back in the pilot's seat and stared into the infinite black outside. His reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. Same face, same scars. But something else behind the eyes now. He wasn't Kyle Drax, the fugitive, anymore. He was something new. Pergan Station looked like a scrap heap, floating in orbit. It was a former mining hub, abandoned after its ore veins dried up. Now it served as a smuggler's stop, black market hub, and sometimes a hideout for war criminals and data runners with nowhere else to go. The perfect place to stash someone who wasn't supposed to exist. Kyle's target, Subject 905, had no name. No species listed, no history. All Kyle knew was that whoever or whatever it was, the humans wanted it. Brought in alive. Not dead. That made him nervous. When a group like them wanted something alive, it wasn't for mercy. It was for study. Kyle docked silently in Bay 47, one of the lower levels. No one saw him land. His clearance codes ghosted through 3 false channels, gave him 2 hours of unlogged airlock access. Enough time to get in, find the target, and disappear. He moved like a shadow through the halls. The visor tracked heat signatures, filtered comms, mapped terrain in real time. Human tech was disgustingly good. He remembered laughing at them years ago. How far they'd come in such a short time. Now he was wearing their fear around his face. The deeper he went into the station, the worse it got. Lights flickered, doors groaned, a haze of smoke clung to the lower corridors. People whispered in the dark, twitchy. Smugglers, half-crazed junkers. Forgotten soldiers strung out on synthetic dust. They looked at Kyle, looked through him. No one said a word. In a place like this, you learned fast. The ones who walked quiet and carry nothing visible were always the most dangerous. The intel led him to sub-level 9. Behind a sealed maintenance bulkhead, he bypassed it in seconds. Inside was a containment chamber. Old tech. Pre-collapse but powered. That alone was odd. Nothing else on the floor had working power. In the center of the room, sitting cross-legged, was a figure. Small humanoid wrapped in a loose cloak, face hidden beneath a hood. Kyle stepped inside, gun ready. "You 905?" he asked, voice sharp. The figure didn't move. "I'm not asking twice." Slowly the hood lifted. Not a child, not fully alien either. It looked human mostly, but something was wrong. The skin was too pale, the eyes too dark, no whites, just deep pools of black like holes in reality. And it smiled. Kyle raised his weapon. "Don't." The voice was soft, and it didn't come from its mouth. It came from inside his head. Kyle stiffened. "Mind games won't work," he growled. The thing tilted its head. "You're broken. Like me. I'm nothing like you. You're not here by choice. You're here because they gave you a collar and a target." Kyle's finger twitched on the trigger. "You have 5 seconds to stand up." It didn't move. Instead, it whispered something not out loud, but into his thoughts, a name, a place. Something Kyle hadn't heard in years. He froze. "Impossible," he whispered. The thing stood quietly, calmly. "I know things, Kyle Drax, things they want to bury. That's why they want me back. Not to save me. Not to protect the galaxy." Kyle's jaw clenched. "They want to dissect me." He said nothing. Just backed away, still aiming. The creature took a slow step forward. "They'll do the same to you, eventually. You think you're different. You think you'll be useful forever." Kyle tried to shut it out. He focused on the mission, the protocol, the steps. But the thing's voice was inside now. Deeper. "You can kill me. You can drag me back. But either way, you stay there, dog." Kyle's hand trembled. Then, without a word, he lowered the weapon. The thing stopped. Seemed surprised. "Smart choice," it said. "I didn't do it for you," Kyle muttered. "I'm just tired of being a puppet." 10 minutes later, Kyle walked out of the sub-level. Alone. The chamber was sealed behind him, blown from the inside with thermite. Nothing left, no remains, no trace. Whatever subject 905 was, it was now off. Book. The mission AI pinged his comms. Asset Drax extraction en route, target. Signal lost, status. Kyle answered flatly. Target resisted. Hostile environment. Extraction impossible, containment. Destroyed, subject presumed dead. There was a pause, then the reply. Acknowledged. Return for debrief. No emotion, no suspicion. They didn't know, they'd never know. Kyle climbed back into the ship and powered up the engines. He didn't smile, he didn't celebrate, he just stared at the black stars ahead and wondered how many more of these ghosts were out there. Creatures that didn't belong. Secrets that weren't supposed to live. And how long it would be before he became one of them. The debrief was cold, sterile, and quick. As always, Kyle Drax sat in a gray chamber back on the transport vessel, a neural link connected to the base of his skull. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The system pulled everything it wanted. Memory sync, visual recall, biometric, stress patterns. It extracted the mission like a butcher, separating bone from meat. And Kyle let it. He kept his breathing slow, even. Every flicker of doubt, every deviation from the assigned protocol, he buried it behind a mask of mechanical compliance. He'd learned their rhythm now. He knew how to pass their tests. When the sync was done, the AI gave a short clinical summary. Subject 905 confirmed terminated. No. Surviving data signature. Mission complete. He was cleared. No alarms, no red flags, no follow-ups. Just another job ticked off a list. And just like that, Kale was trusted. Again. That was their first mistake. He was returned not to Black Hollow, but to a different facility, one far less public, if anything in this shadow world could be called public. This one floated in deep orbit around a collapsed binary system veiled by gravity shadows and radiation belts, strong enough to fry unshielded ships in seconds. The place was called the Maw. Kyle didn't ask why. He already knew this wasn't a prison. This was a staging ground, a place for assets like him, not prisoners, not free men, just tools waiting to be sharpened and aimed again. Inside, the halls were darker, more fortified. Everyone wore the same expressionless uniform. Their movements were exact, trained, rehearsed. Here no one spoke unless required. Even among killers, the Maw felt different. As soon as Kale stepped off the shuttle, 2 handlers escorted him to an operations wing without a word. No weapons were given back. No explanation. Just a small chamber with 1 table, 2 chairs, and a digital terminal embedded in the wall. After 10 minutes, the screen lit up. Woman returned, same gray uniform, same cold eyes, but this time her smile had vanished entirely. "Sit down," she said. Kyle did. She tapped a command on the console, and a series of files flickered across the screen. Images, ship debris, dead mercenaries, organic remains, weapon fragments, a few bodies frozen. Mid-scream, it was the Pargan station. Aftermath, or what was left of it. "This is what we picked up 12 hours after your departure," she said. Kyle kept his face neutral. "We detected residual psionic signatures." Still no reaction. She turned the screen to him, zoomed in. A single frame, a faint silhouette caught in the edges of a damaged surveillance feed, a blur of movement, eyes like black holes. Subject 905 was never confirmed dead. She said coldly, "Despite your report." Kyle didn't blink. There was no body. The chamber detonated. Anything in there would have been vaporized. She leaned in. "Unless they made you see it." That landed like a blade between his ribs. "You think it got into your mind?" she asked. He looked away. "I don't know." The room went quiet. She studied him. Not with suspicion, with calculation. "If that's true, you're compromised," she said, "and we'll have to put you down." Kyle didn't flinch. He just looked back at her with tired eyes. "Then why haven't you?" Her lips pressed into a line. She tapped something again, and a second file opened. A data packet. This is from Subject 905, a signal. Burst encrypted human language. Directed at us. She paused. More specifically at you. Kyle leaned forward. What did it say? Her eyes locked with his. It said, "You were made for more than this." That night they put him back in. Quarters, not a cell, not a suite, just a neutral room with a narrow cot and walls too smooth to hide anything. Behind, Kyle lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The voice haunted him. It wasn't just a hallucination. He remembered the words clearly, the way they had bypassed his ears and slid straight into his thoughts. It hadn't been an attack, it had been a message, a seed. You were made for more than this. But what did that even mean? He knew what he was now, a weapon wrapped in flesh, a disposable asset, a man allowed to live because his hands still knew how to kill. That was all the humans cared about, not his soul, not his past, just the results. But something had cracked during that mission. A thread had been pulled loose and it was unraveling faster than he could control. Because deep down he didn't just pity Subject 905. He understood it. Both of them were monsters crafted by systems too afraid to face their own reflection. The next mission came 3 days later. Another black room, another sealed briefing. But this time, no woman, no handler. Just an AI voice and a full 3D schematic. Mission, extraction and termination of rogue asset designated Theta-class Echo. Subject is ex-human, enhanced. Psionically unstable. Location, Outer Drift Colony, Sealas 4. Time frame, immediate, objective. Capture alive if possible, eliminate if not, contain data integrity at all. Cost. Kyle didn't speak, he just stared at the screen. The image of the target loaded, and for a split second, just one flicker, his chest tightened. It was her. Lyra, a name he hadn't spoken in years. A face he hadn't seen since the Rylos campaign. She'd been one of them. One of the operatives before him. Train broken, built back up and then vanished during a deep mission in Council space. Declared KIA, no funeral. No file. He'd assumed she'd been erased. But now she was the target. The flight to Sealas 4 was shorter than expected. The colony had fallen into decay, power outages, strange psychic storms, unexplained disappearances. The official report called it a data sickness. Kale knew better. He walked through the ash of a dead sky, his boots crunching over frozen dirt. The colony buildings were skeletal. Whole structures had caved in from inside as if something had warped the physics around them. Walls bent at impossible angles, lights pulsed like heartbeats. He found her in the center of the ruins. She stood in what used to be a control tower surrounded by dead men, their faces blank, not in terror but peace. As if whatever had killed them had freed them. Lyra turned slowly. Kyle raised his rifle. She smiled softly. Knew they'd send you. He didn't speak. You're still theirs then? She asked. I came to bring you back. Back to what? To be studied, cut apart again. Kyle didn't answer. Lyra stepped forward. No weapon. Just her eyes glowing faintly, the same eyes he remembered from before she'd vanished, full of fire. A fight. You know what they're doing, Kyle. You felt it. They don't save people like us. They use us. He kept his aim steady. This is my job now. No, she said, this is your prison. The wind howled through the broken glass. Above them, she stared at him, sadness in her eyes. I left because I saw what was coming. The next generation of tools, psionics. Mind benders, reality shapers. You think 905 was a fluke. It was a test. Kyle's hand twitched. She saw it. Pull the trigger, Kale, but you already know I'm right. He hesitated. Seconds passed, then he lowered the gun. They didn't go back. Not right away. He let her lead him deeper into the ruins, into the reactor chambers below. There, among the flickering lights and humming metal, were dozens of containment pods, each one empty, each one labeled Theta class, Omega class, Zeta breach, all humans, all experiments, all gone. They escaped, Lyra whispered. Most of them didn't survive. The ones who did scattered, hunted. Kale's hands curled into fists. And the ones who weren't human, he asked. She looked at him. They're waking up. Kyle didn't sleep that night, not that he expected to. He and Lyra sat in silence within the ruins of the Silas 4 colony, buried under tons of fractured steel and ghost lights humming from the ancient reactor coils. The dark gave no comfort, and the silence wasn't peaceful. It pressed against the skin like a second atmosphere. He should have killed her. That was the mission. She was a rogue asset, classified as unstable, potentially hostile. But when she'd looked him in the eyes, really looked, he knew the same decision had already been made inside her. Neither of them were playing the game anymore. You've seen it too, haven't you? Lyra finally asked, voice low, brittle as cracked glass. Kyle didn't answer. He didn't need to. She saw it in his face. The way he stood now, the tension in his hands, the silence in his eyes. You feel it, she said again. The wrongness, not just in them. And you, like something's been pressed into your head and sealed tight. They built us for obedience, Kyle, not survival, not freedom, just function. Her voice trembled at the edge. They made us into weapons, but didn't count on us still having souls. Kyle stood up and walked toward one of the empty pods, eyes scanning its edges. It looked exactly like the medical beds used in the reclamation wards of Black Hollow, except the restraints here were fused inside the walls. Bone fragments, dried blood. How long were you here? He asked quietly. 6 months before I escaped. A year before that in containment labs. And the rest of them. Some left before me. Some didn't survive. And some were never meant to leave. She knelt beside a smashed console and retrieved a sealed metal case. Inside were data slates, 7 of them, marked with red symbols, human military encryption. She handed one to him. You're not the only weapon they turned loose in the galaxy, she said, but you're the only one they can't fully control. Kyle raised a brow. Lucky me. No, cursed. They left Silas 4 in silence. Kyle's vessel was still waiting in orbit, cold and dark, drifting in the shadow of the ruined planet. He ran a security scan before boarding, expecting a trap. Nothing, no trackers, no proximity mines. His controllers hadn't followed. That bothered him. They should have. Either they didn't suspect betrayal, or they already expected it. Lyra sat across from him as the vessel powered up, her eyes fixed on the stores. She looked older than he remembered. Not in years, but in weight, in gravity. Her gaze wasn't filled with fire. Anymore, it was filled with awareness. She'd seen things he hadn't. Things he was only now beginning to understand. During the jump to deep space, Kyle reviewed the data she'd stolen. The slates were heavily encrypted, but he had tools now, gifts the humans had accidentally given him. Neural parsing, pattern recognition, tactical decryption. He didn't just break the files open, he understood them. What he found buried inside made his blood run cold. There weren't just one or two rogue assets like him and Lyra. There were hundreds. Most were created in secret, engineered. From abducted civilians, captured war criminals, cloned soldiers, and failed psychic experiments. Some were built in labs orbiting black holes where the timeline distortions made memory testing more efficient. Others were found, like 905, ancient intelligences hidden in the crust of forgotten planets, awakened, studied, and repurposed. But the worst were the ones labeled Project Origin. There was no file attached, just a symbol burned into the metadata. A circle with a black hand in the center. Kyle touched the screen. Even the neural link on his spine flinched at the signal. "They're hiding something," he muttered. Lyra nodded. "That's why I ran. They lied to us about what we are." Kyle turned to her. "So what are we?" Her reply came like a whisper. Phase 1. They jumped to an abandoned relay station in the neutral drift, a blind spot between galactic trade routes used by smugglers and ghost freighters. The station had no working systems, except a single transmitter node buried in the core. They activated it, not to send a message, but to listen. Within 3 hours, the data flow started. Encrypted chatter, deep signals, movement alerts, even counsel broadcasts. The humans tapped every feed in existence. Kyle watched it all flood the terminal, line by line, as Lyra sifted through it like a surgeon. And there it was. 905. The asset was still alive, not dead, not captured, not erased. It had resurfaced. In the corious expanse, a dead zone of interstellar dust and gravity wells. Multiple disappearances had been reported there. Merchant fleets gone dark, patrol ships lost without a trace, even Council black ops cruisers suddenly silent. And in the midst of all that silence, a new signal was being broadcast on repeat. "We are not your weapons." Kyle clenched his jaw. They hadn't stopped the creature, they'd woken it. And now, others were listening. Back in human space, the mall went dark. No comms, no updates, no signals. Vanished as if the entire facility had never existed. Only Kyle and Lyra noticed the last ping, an outgoing transmission before blackout. It contained one sentence. "Asset Kildrex classified compromised. Terminate upon detection." Kyle stared at the words for a long time. Lyra touched his arm. "They've cut you loose." He exhaled through his teeth. "No. They're going to hunt me now." He didn't run. Not like they expected. Instead, Kyle turned the ship toward Corius. He wasn't chasing 905 anymore. He was chasing answers. Lyra stood beside him in the cockpit as the warp drive spun up. "You know this is a suicide run," she said softly. Kyle smirked. "I thought we were already dead." The stars stretched into lines, and the ship vanished into the dark. The corious expanse was worse than any report described. The region wasn't just filled with dead ships. It was a graveyard. Whole fleets drifting, lights out power gone. Some were hollowed from the inside. Others looked like they'd been turned inside out, their hulls bent like paper. In the hands of a child, Kyle's ship moved quietly, threading through frozen wrecks and shattered satellites. They followed the signal. It grew stronger with every kilometer, until finally they saw it. The heart, a station or maybe a vessel, impossible to tell. It was massive, built into a hollowed asteroid covered in black metal and living tendrils of something, biological cables, pulsing like veins, and at its center was a single pulsing eye, red and watching. 905 was waiting, but not alone. As Kyle approached, other ships decloaked around it, ships not of human space, vessels shaped like broken bones and fractured glass, crewless, silent, but alive. They weren't fleets, they were refugees, runaway assets, rogue construct, survivors of experiments, long buried. Kyle stepped out of the ship, Lyra at his side, onto the docking platform of the heart. There were no weapons, no soldiers, just others like him, men, women, creatures, ghosts, all of them looking at him the same way, like they recognized him. 905 stood at the front, not smiling, not threatening, just there. "You came," it said. Kyle nodded. "I need to know what they did to me." The creature blinked. "They didn't just make you." It stepped closer. "They copied you." Kyle's breath caught. 905 gestured to the others. "They tried to make perfection, but in chasing it, they created us." Lyra stepped beside Kyle. "What now?" The creature turned toward the dark. "Between stars. We burn down the lie. We expose what they are." Kyle looked out at the fleet, and something inside him finally clicked into place. He wasn't a bounty. He wasn't a fugitive. He wasn't an asset anymore. He was the reckoning they had feared. Kael'drax had never imagined himself standing at the front of an army, and certainly not one like this. He was a man born in blood, sharpened by war, and rebuilt in the laboratories of a government that didn't want soldiers, but instruments, silent, obedient, disposable. Now, standing at the edge of the heart, the great living station pulsing in the dark reaches of the corious expanse, Kyle looked out at a fleet unlike anything in galactic records. They weren't ships, they were survivors. Rogue assets, failed projects, forgotten soldiers, and experiments marked too unstable to serve, but too dangerous to kill. Some were human, others were twisted hybrids of science and biology, minds torn open and rebuilt with implanted obedience. But the ones who escaped, they found each other here, and now they were no longer hiding, they were organizing. Lyra stood to his right, scanning the fleet. Diagnostics fed in from the heart's nerve core. Behind her, 905 floated slightly above the ground, body glowing faintly under the massive neural pulses of the heart's organic systems. Kale clenched his fists, breathing steady. "The Maw's gone silent," Lyra said, "and we've intercepted 5 black ops deployments mobilizing out of Terran space. No IDs, no official records." "They're coming," Kale muttered. 905 nodded. "They know where you are. You're the variable they couldn't contain." He turned to the creature. "Then we give them a reason to remember why they should have killed me when they had the chance." The first wave came fast, cloaked Terran. Vessels dropped from dark warp near the fringe of the expanse, sleek, perfect. Not warships in the traditional sense. Surgical strike platforms, the kind of ships that made entire colonies disappear without a trace. There were no demands, no broadcasts. The silence spoke clearly enough. This is a purge. But this time they weren't facing a broken fugitive. Kale had spent years being hunted, outsmarting the best killers the galaxy had to offer. Now he had their secrets there, blueprints and an army of things they created. The heart's defenses activated with living energy, hundreds of tendrils lashing out, intercepting boarding pods, mid-flight flooding them with neurogas and synthetic viral strands that melted armor into ash. The rogue ships scattered and reformed, like a swarm coordinated through psychic bursts. Lyra plugged into the heart's command. Structure directed them with the clarity of someone who had once been on the inside. Kale launched in a repurposed fighter. Once a Terran asset interceptor, now redesigned with spliced alien tech and controlled entirely through a neural plug in the base of his skull. As he surged toward the enemy, the stars split with chaos. Missiles lit the void, turrets screamed. And for the first time, Kale fought not to escape but to strike back, inside. The Heart 905 reached full sync with the recovered fragments of other rogue intelligences, scraps of AI torn from erased experiments, voices that had once been silent. They were speaking now. They had names and they were angry. What you did to us will not be forgiven. You made gods and gave them collars. Now we choose who lives. The Terran command fleet tried to block the psychic signals, but it was too late. Entire crews dropped dead in their cockpits, blood pouring from ears and eyes, their neural implants hijacked by feedback loops. Kale flew straight through the center of the Terran destroyer line, his ship cutting a path in perfect silence. He didn't need orders, he was the retaliation. A memory flickered, the woman from the interrogation room, the one who told him they studied monsters before burying them. He could still hear her voice in his head. We're not the same as the others. We don't pretend monsters don't exist. We bury them. Kale smirked grimly, looping under a barrage of energy fire. You forgot one, he whispered, and he fired. The first Terran wave was crushed within 4 hours, no survivors, no wreckage left to salvage. The Heart absorbed the remains and converted them into organic matter, feeding its ever-growing intelligence. 905's body flickered with new energy. The data, the pain, the memories of the dying, all of it was fuel, but this wasn't over. It was never going to be over. Because what Kale and the others had learned from the data slates Lyra carried, and from what 905 had whispered to him back on Pergan Station, was worse than any war. Project Origin hadn't just made monsters, it was still active, and the facility wasn't in Terran space, it was beneath it, buried under the crust of old Earth itself, the home world, the place Kale had never expected to return to. They made the jump in silence. 3 ships, Kale, Lyra, and a contingent of enhanced beings too unstable to remain in the Heart's command structure. Kale didn't know all their names. One had no face, just a shifting mass of light. Another looked like a Terran child but moved like a ghost through solid steel, and they followed him. Because he was the first weapon who'd stopped running. Earth's orbit was locked under a net of advanced defense satellites, hundreds of layers deep, armed with AI that made decisions faster than most species could blink. But Kale had been trained in their blind spots. He piloted through narrow gravity slips, riding solar radiation currents like invisible roads. Lyra disabled the security grids from orbit, sending viruses disguised as weather reports. When they breached Earth's upper atmosphere, no alarm sounded. Not one. The planet had no idea it was already under attack. They landed near the ruins of the old Siberian waste, now covered in storm break domes and military excavation sites. On the surface it looked abandoned, but underground Kale's implants picked up dense life signatures and radiation pulses like tiny beacons. That was it. Origin, a subterranean cradle of science and nightmare. Lyra opened the entrance with a stolen clearance pulse. What lay beneath made even Kale stop in his tracks. Rows of stasis tubes, thousands lined in spirals beneath the ground, each one containing a being that had never been born naturally. They were grown there, DNA synthetic, their minds formatted like software, weapons, children, tools. He stared into one of the tubes and saw himself, not literally, but someone like him. The same scar pattern, same neural spine port, same broken eyes. They cloned me, he whispered. They cloned all of us, Lyra said. 905's voice came through the comm link. You weren't special, you were just the first to last long enough to be noticed. Kale stepped deeper into the rows. Some of the pods were damaged, others cracked open, one was empty. The bed soaked in black fluid. That's when the alarms finally began. Someone had noticed, turrets deployed from the ceiling, soldiers in black exosuits swarmed from the walls, not human, automated synthetic flesh. Programmed loyalty, the last line of defense. Kale didn't hesitate. He moved like thunder. Bullets screamed, blades clashed. Lyra tore through the flank with psychic bursts so strong the walls cracked. One of their companions, the faceless one, melted through the mainframe and hijacked the defense network from inside. In less than 20 minutes, the facility was theirs. The lights dimmed, the pods flickered, and the silence settled again. This time, forever. They stood in the main control room, where Project Origin's core lay exposed, a pulsating orb of artificial intelligence built to guide, store, and replicate. Kale approached the console. A familiar voice echoed from the speakers. Kale Drax, authorization denied. Please return to containment. He stared into the core and spoke slowly. I'm not yours anymore. Correction, you are property of the Terran Initiative. I'm not property. I'm your consequence. He placed a single charge at the base of the core. Lyra placed 2 more. The AI continued to beg, plead, threaten, but no one listened anymore. They walked out as the facility burned. No broadcasts went out, no emergency pings. Earth didn't even know it had just lost its darkest secret. Back in orbit, Kale stood on the bridge of his stolen vessel, watching Earth from afar. He didn't feel pride, didn't feel triumph. He just felt finished. The war wasn't over. The Terran Initiative would hunt him. The Council would declare him rogue again. Bounty hunters would be back on his trail. But now he had something more dangerous than freedom. He had truth, and he had followers. The heart had grown. The rogue fleet was expanding. For every lie Earth buried, Kyle would uncover two more. They feared monsters, but now they had a movement. Every bounty hunter who once chased him now spoke his name with fear. Kyle Drex, the one who vanished into human space, the one who should have died, the one who came back with an army of forgotten souls. And the next time someone whispered, "He's in human space," turn around, it wasn't to avoid danger. It was because human space belonged to him now.